Your mother would have loved this, said my dad one night in December as we all sat in the living room watching our favorite Christmas movies. He said this every single year. My name is Sammy, and I live with my dad, stepmom, and sister Michelle. When I was 5 years old and Michelle was 3, something happened to our family that would change us forever. Before I tell you what happened, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that notification bell if you never want to miss out on another great story. Thanks, you're the best. I didn't really remember much about my mom. I know she was kind, and she always read us stories before bed. She made us our favorite meals and always said nice things to us. But as time went by, I was beginning to forget what she looked like. My dad loved my mom. I remember that they were always hugging or joking with each other. Our house was filled with happiness. Then one day, my mom didn't come home. My dad was an architect, and he worked from home. He would usually pick us up from school and make us dinner, and Mom would come home at about 6 o'clock. I remember this because it was always while my father was watching the news, but that night was different. He finished watching the news and looked a bit worried. "What's wrong, Daddy?" Michelle asked in her innocent little voice. "Your mom should be home by now, but she isn't. Anyway, I'll read your bedtime story tonight," he said and smiled. He tucked us both into bed, then went back to the living room to wait for our mom. The next morning, we woke up to sirens. When we went downstairs, there were 2 policemen there, and my dad was talking to them. "My wife didn't come home last night. I have no idea where she is. I've tried calling her, but I can't get through," my dad said in a panic. It seemed like he was going to burst into tears any second. I held on to Michelle, who started crying. "Don't worry, she'll come back," I said, trying to comfort her. My dad kept us home from school that day and the next, but my mom never showed up. He stuck posters all over the neighborhood, had several interviews on television begging her to come home or for anyone who knew anything to contact him, but there was no luck. She never came back. My dad became so depressed that my grandma had to come help to take care of us. When I was 9 years old, he met Tracy, my stepmom. He became happier again, and before he knew it, we were flower girls at their amazing wedding. Finally, we had a normal household again with a mom and a dad. Tracy was really kind to us. In fact, she was the best stepmother anyone could ever ask for. She did all the things my mom used to do and more. So I grew up into a happy teenager with a nearly perfect life. I went to a great school and had many cool friends. I loved theater, and I got all the leading roles in every single play I auditioned for. I was also the head of the cheerleading squad, and to top it all off, I was a straight A student. But you know what they say, when everything is great, something is probably going to go wrong soon, or a bit crazy. And that is exactly what happened. It all started during one of my plays. We were putting on a modern-day television of the Addams Family, with our own little twist. I was playing the role of Wednesday. I had invited my whole family to come, and they were all there. Just before the scene, which required me to chase Cousin It off the stage, the theater door opened and a woman walked in. I froze and forgot all my lines. She looked just like my mom. "Sammy, snap out of it," Cousin It whispered, and I did eventually. After the play, I felt weird. Was I losing it? "I could have sworn I saw Mom tonight," I said to Michelle after dinner. "What? Where?" she replied. "At the play. She walked in and I froze. You don't remember that?" I said. "Oh, I thought you just forgot your lines. Anyway, it can't be Mom. She's gone. Just go to sleep and you'll feel better tomorrow," Michelle said, then went to bed. Although she was younger, she was more logical and always gave good advice. I listened to her and fell asleep. A few days later, my whole family and I were gathered in the living room watching a documentary about solar systems when we heard a knock on the door. "Who could be here so late? Maybe they're lost," my dad said. "Maybe it's a burglar," Michelle whispered. "Burglars don't knock on your door, silly," I said while poking her arm and laughing. We all got up and followed my dad to the door. He opened it and a woman jumped into his arms. "Oh, Fred, I've missed you so much, my darling husband," she said. I was about to get a baseball bat so I could hit her with it when I froze. Michelle froze too. The woman let go of my dad and stared at us in awe. "My babies! Oh my babies! You have grown so much. I've missed you so much. Babies, come here and give Mom a hug," she said. It really was my mom. And here she was after disappearing for all those years. Tracy just stood there awkwardly. I mean, what else was there to do? Eventually, she suggested that we go to the dining room for tea. "What happened to you? Where did you go?" "I've been worried sick. I'm remarried, though. Tracy is my new wife," my dad said after a long silence. My mom scowled, then she smiled. "I was kidnapped. I was taken away to another country and forced to work in a factory. It was awful. I wasn't allowed to communicate with anyone. I never got a chance to use a phone or computer, so there was no way to contact you. It was like I was in prison. I was so miserable and I didn't know what to do. Then a few weeks ago, I was in bed and one of the guards left the room for a while. I snuck out through a small bathroom window and ran until I could find somebody to help me. They let me live with them and one day gave me enough money for a plane ticket to come back home, she said. But what about the kidnappers? Why didn't you go to the police? My dad asked, shocked. This story was too much for everyone. They're too powerful and I didn't want to risk being heard of or found again. I just wanted to come home, she said. Then she started crying. Do you have somewhere to stay? My dad asked. No, I don't. I have nothing, just the clothes on my back, she said. Well, you can stay here then, don't worry, he said. I looked over at my stepmom and she looked a bit confused. But I guess we couldn't turn my mom away. She was family after all. Thank you so much, Fred. By the way, I snuck into your play the other night, Sammy. You were wonderful, she said. So it really was her all along. That night, we went to bed really late. Michelle and I stayed up with our mom and told her about everything that happened after she left. We felt so happy to have her back. When we woke up the next morning, she had already made breakfast and laid the table. She remembered our favorites, and it seemed like she prepared them all so lovingly. My stepmom walked in with a worried expression on her face. It's Sunday. I usually make protein shakes for breakfast on Sundays, she said. Tracy was a person who loved routines, and anything that came in the way made her angry or anxious. Oh, relax, sweetie. It's only one day, plus I'm their mom and I know what they like, she replied a bit aggressively. At that moment, my dad walked in. Wow, it's all our favorite foods. You really shouldn't have, honey. You've outdone yourself, he said. My stepmom frowned and left the room. We all enjoyed our breakfast, then our mom suggested that we go for a walk. My dad stayed home with Tracy, so it was just the three of us. We went to a mall and we treated our mom to whatever she wanted since she had no money. We went strolling through the park and spoke about so many things. It was great catching up with her, and we were so happy that she was back. Later we went to watch a movie and we got home at about 9 that night. You know it's past your curfew, young ladies. It's a school night. Go shower and get ready for bed, Tracy said as we opened the door. How dare you speak to my daughters like that? My mom said. They're my daughters too. I can't allow you to come here and ruin everything, Tracy replied. It was then we realized that the two women would never, ever get along. The next day when we got home from school, we heard Tracy screaming. I just cleaned the carpet and she threw dirt all over it. I threw dirt? This house is a filthy mess. When I left, it was clean, and years later this place looks like a garbage dump. You call this cleaning? Our mom screamed back. I know you threw this dirt here on purpose, Tracy screamed again. Ladies, what's the matter? My dad asked. Tracy explained her side of the story. Well, have you considered that maybe you just missed a spot? He said. A spot? A spot? There is dirt all over the rug, she shouted. We opened the door and walked to the living room to observe for ourselves. It was clear that our mom had made it dirty because it was clean when we left. But we said nothing. Stuff like this happened for the next few weeks. Tracy would clean and our mom would mess it up. Tracy would cook a wholesome, healthy meal and our mom would order pizza. Our dad took our mom's side every single time. Our mom also used our dad's credit card and spent his money on all sorts of things. He didn't seem to mind. Michelle and I tried not to take it all too seriously, but one night we had the shock of our lives. It was probably midnight. I got up to get some water and Michelle followed me quietly. Before I reached the kitchen, I heard some muffled voices. I walked closer to listen. I still love you. I've always loved you, our dad said. I love you too, Fred. You need to leave your new wife, our mom replied. They kissed for a long time. We turned around because it was gross, then we realized that Tracy was standing behind us. She had heard it all. You dog! I hate you! How could you do this to me? She said while picking up a huge vase and aiming it at my dad's head. He ducked and it shattered to pieces on the wall. She went upstairs, packed a bag, and left. We never saw her again. The next few days, my mom and dad behaved just like they did when we were little, always joking and wrapped up in each other's arms. It's like my dad didn't even remember that Tracy existed. I sort of felt bad because she was a really nice lady who had been so kind to us. She didn't deserve this. Then, like deja vu, we returned home from school one afternoon and our mom was gone. She was just in the living room. I went upstairs to shower and when I come back, she was gone, my dad said while crying. Maybe she just went for a walk, Michelle suggested. But days passed and she never returned. Did she leave on purpose? Did the kidnappers return for her? We had no idea and nothing made sense. I spent most of my time moping around the house. Everyone was depressed. Go out to the mall and do something you enjoy, my dad suggested one Saturday. He handed me and my sister $100 each, and we left. We had to walk to the bus stop, and on our way, we both had a strange feeling like we were being followed. Ah! I heard Michelle scream. I turned around, and a man dressed in black had placed a bag over her head. Before I could say anything, the same thing happened to me. I kicked and screamed, but I couldn't overpower the person holding me. I felt like I was in a car for a few hours. Then I felt myself being carried upstairs, and after, it sounded like we were on a plane. I fell asleep, so I don't know how long we were flying for. I felt us land and woke up. Let me out! Where am I? Michelle, are you still there? I screamed. I'm right here, she said. We were carried down the stairs and put into a car again. After driving for a few hours, we were taken to another location and the bags were taken off our faces. The men left. There was so much light, I felt like I was being blinded. Welcome to Thailand, a voice said. I stared at the person speaking to me and I couldn't believe it. Mom? I asked. Did you have us kidnapped? Why are we here? Are you crazy? Michelle said. It was the only way. I'm so sorry. Anyway, the story I told you all back at the house was a lie. I was tired of my life, so I ran away to Asia. I live here with my new husband and my 3 children, your brothers and sisters. I want you to live here with me. I only came back so I could get you kids back. I missed you so much and I wanted you to live with me, she said. Look around. This could be your new home, she continued. Her house was like a palace. Her husband came to meet us and our new siblings just stared at us silently. Anyway, I won't force you to make a decision. You can stay here for a few days and make up your mind later. If you want to go back to your dad, I'll let you, she said. I looked at Michelle and she looked back at me. We said nothing to each other. What do you think we did? Tell us in the comments and maybe I'll reveal this to you in part 2.
Amber, make sure your little brothers and sisters wash up after breakfast and get ready for school. My mom screamed over the noise of my irritating siblings. I was the eldest child. My brothers and sisters were all between the ages of 3 and 10. So, of course, I was a permanently annoyed 16-year-old. I honestly believed my family was the lamest in the entire world. Because of my age, I was also like the 3rd parent in the household. The parents were always working really hard to ensure that we were all comfortable, so I had to do almost everything for these annoying brats. Whenever I had a little bit of time to myself, I'd lock myself in my room to try to unwind. But within a few minutes, someone would always come banging on my door asking me for something. There was always a spill to wipe, a mess to clean up, or a crying child to comfort. Before I finish my story, please don't forget to give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. You're the prettiest girl in the world. My boyfriend Earl would always say to me, even when I felt ugly, overwhelmed, and tired. My parents knew nothing about him, and if they did, I was sure they'd kill me. He was a high school dropout and was 2 years older than me. Every day after school, I'd meet him at his house. I told my parents I was part of a study group, so they never asked questions about where I was. My boyfriend was part of a heavy metal band. He played the guitar, and he was really, really good. His garage was like their studio and practice room. They rehearsed there almost every day. I found peace when I watched them practice because it was a break from my chaotic life at home. After practice, we'd always grab a drink and go somewhere to make out. He was my life. But one evening, he revealed something to me that would change my life forever. Amber, honey, I have something important to tell you, he said. What? I asked. Sean's grandfather is letting us borrow his RV for a year. We've decided to go on tour. We're tired of this old town. We don't get any gigs or attention here, he said. My heart broke. So, do you mean I won't see you for a whole year? I cried. Well, yeah, unless what? I asked. Well, you could always come with me, he said. I gasped. My parents didn't even know he existed. So how would they react if I told them I was going on tour? I didn't respond to Earl. Instead, I walked home, sadder than I'd ever felt in my life. When I got home, I opened the door, and it looked like a literal tornado had passed through my house. Amber, thank God you're home. Clean this up quickly. The kids made a mess and I have to make dinner, my mom said. No. How are you, honey? No. How was your day, dear? Nothing. It's like I existed simply to clean up messes. I've got to get out of here. I thought. After dealing with all the chaos, I went up to my room and texted Earl. I let him know I decided to come and asked him when we'd be leaving. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. sharp? He instantly responded. Whoa, already? I replied, shocked. I didn't have much time to prepare. I grabbed the backpack I used for school and began filling it with things I thought I'd need. I wouldn't be able to sneak out with a suitcase, so I'd need to stick to the basics to make myself look as unsuspicious as possible. The next day was Saturday. My parents went out to brunch because they were just tired of their noisy children. I still hadn't figured out exactly how I'd leave until my little sister came up to me excitedly. Amber, let's play hide and seek! That's a great idea, I thought. Sure, I replied. She gathered all the kids and they ran towards me happily. Okay, you all hide first and I'll count to 20, I said. They ran off chuckling. I counted, then went to look for them. After I found them all, my little sister said, It's your turn to hide, Amber. Yes, it is. It's going to be very difficult, but keep trying, okay, guys? I said. We'll find you, don't worry, my little brother said. They turned around and began counting to 20. I ran up to my bedroom, grabbed my backpack, and quietly snuck out the back door. I ran as quickly as I could to Earl's house. That was too easy. I'm finally free, I thought. When I got to Earl's house, the RV was already parked outside. Earl was in front of his garage. You came, he said while smiling from ear to ear. We hugged and he squeezed me very tightly. I'm so happy you decided to come. We're gonna have a great time together, he said. I'd never been more excited in my life. After a few hours, all the other band members arrived and we got onto the RV and drove away. As I looked out through the window, I wondered for a moment whether my parents were back home and if my siblings were okay. Don't worry, everyone will be fine, my boyfriend said, almost as if he could read my mind. He handed me an orange Fanta, my favorite drink, and kissed me on my cheek. I stared out of the window for hours just looking at the beautiful scenery. Eventually, I fell asleep. When I woke up later, I checked my phone and had dozens of messages from friends and family. They wanted to know where I was and if I was okay. I texted my mom. I'm fine. You won't see me for a while. Please don't try to contact me. I just need a break from all of you. And I switched off my phone. I'll need a new SIM card, I said to my boyfriend. I didn't want anyone at home to be able to contact me. When we reached the next date, Earl gave me some money and I bought the card and a few other things for myself. Their first gig was in a little bar that night. We all had a wonderful experience and the small crowd loved the band. The first few months were thrilling. I'd never enjoyed myself so much in my life. I traveled to many new places, discovered new things, and made new friends. The best part of it all was that I was with my loving boyfriend Earl. I was so happy that we went to sleep and woke up in the same room. And for a long time, I felt like he was all I needed. That feeling only lasted for a short while. It started with the little things, like when he woke up, he wouldn't smile at me or make me breakfast. Then he stopped calling me the cute little pet names he used to have for me. He just called me by my first name. I thought it was all in my imagination, but it really hit me when he started this conversation one night. Have you ever thought of going back home? He said. What? No, I want to spend my life with you. I haven't been this happy in, ever, I replied. Well, your parents are still searching for you, and they're very worried. In fact, the police have questioned all your friends, and everyone is trying to figure out where you are. I don't want to get in trouble for this, he said coldly. I thought you wanted me here, I said. He completely ignored what I said and went on. Besides, you dropped out of school for me. Are you just going to follow me around for the rest of your life? Don't you want to achieve anything for yourself? I was crushed. Was he really trying to get rid of me? I scowled at him and ignored him for the rest of the night. The next few days, he grew colder with me, and I became sadder because I couldn't believe this was actually happening. I tried to tell myself that maybe he was a bit depressed because the band wasn't getting as many gigs as before. Reality kicked in one afternoon. Earl had a big show that night, so I decided to go to a supermarket as we were low on food. I took care of most of the errands when the guys practiced anyways. When I was about 2 blocks away, I realized I had forgotten my purse. I ran back to the RV, and as I stepped inside, I heard him on the phone. Yeah, babe, she just left. You can come over now. And he hung up. He couldn't possibly cheat on me, I thought. I heard him walk to the bathroom, so I snuck into one of the bedrooms and hid under the bed. A few minutes later, I heard a knock, and Earl opened the door. Hey, stud muffin, I heard a female voice say. Hi, gorgeous. I couldn't wait for you to get here, he said. He walked with her to the bedroom, and I could see their feet from where I was under the bed. I missed you so much these past few days. Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. I just have to find a way to get rid of Amber and we can be together, he said. Then it sounded like they were making out. I started crying. After they left, I stayed under the bed, and I cried and cried. I couldn't stop. Eventually, I left the RV and went walking around aimlessly to think. I needed to leave Earl, there was no doubt about it. But how could I go back to my parents? I didn't want to do that either. I was too proud. I also couldn't survive on my own because I hadn't finished high school and there was no way I could get a job that paid me well enough to survive. So I made up my mind to stay with Earl and pretend I didn't know that he was cheating on me. A few more horrible weeks passed. The band wasn't doing well at all, so we had less and less money. Some nights I went to bed hungry, and other days we had nothing but mac and cheese in the box. As I tried to fall asleep one night, I was startled by the hushed voices of some of the band members. I didn't know who was saying what because they were all whispers. We have no choice. It's a crime. We have no money. Okay, so when do we do this? Right now. There's a convenience store around the corner and it's still open. Earl then shook my shoulder, trying to wake me up because he thought I was sleeping. We're going to rob the store around the corner. We need you to be on the lookout, he said. You're not even asking me if I want to do this? You're just telling me what to do, I replied. Aren't you hungry? Just hurry up and get ready, he said. I got up and followed them. We got there in a flash. They put on their masks and I was shocked by how scary they looked. I stood outside like I came on my own. Then I took out my cell phone and pretended to be occupied. After waiting about 10 minutes, I began to suspect that something was wrong. I looked inside and didn't see any of the guys. I walked in, and when I got to the second aisle of the store, I saw all 4 of them, including Earl, handcuffed and lying on their bellies on the floor. Apparently, there were 3 cops in plain clothes in the store. When the guys tried to rob the cashier, they were instantly forced into handcuffs and arrested. I walked out of the store quickly. Now, I had nowhere to go. I had no choice but to return home. I stole the little bit of money that was still left in the RV, and I paid for a bus ticket back to my town. When I got there, my parents embraced me, crying tears of joy. They promised never to make my life hell again and to employ a babysitter to take care of the kids, so that I could enjoy the last bit of my childhood. I wished I'd never run away. It was a huge mistake. Now I'm so glad I get to enjoy my life with my family.
My life is the epitome of a cliche. I grew up in a small town with both parents. They were best friends with the neighbors next door. These neighbors, you guessed it, had a son named Chad. Chad and I knew each other since we were babies, and our parents have the embarrassing pictures to prove it. We eventually started dating during high school. I can't remember us ever having a fight, and I love the fact that he is so protective of me. Hi, my name is Monique, and everything that I'm about to say is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But before I continue, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and of course, hit the notification bell. Chad proposed to me on my 21st birthday party. After college, most of our friends went their separate ways. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do even though I got a degree in business management. Chad got an internship with Dr. Herschel, and he didn't want to move without me by his side. He saw this as a great opportunity to make his name in the science arena. I took a job as a secretary in a law firm. It's not the job that I wanted, but Chad said that we all needed to start somewhere. I was just happy to get out of the apartment during the day. A few months after our move, I began having nightmares. Sometimes they would last days. Weeks may pass before the nightmare reared its ugly head, and every time I woke up dripping with sweat and screaming for help. Monique, it's okay, I'm here, Chad whispered as he pulled me close. I usually wouldn't be able to go back to sleep after the nightmares, and Chad gave me a sedative so that I was able to get some rest. Chad said that my parents died in a fire, and the psychologist said that I'm suppressing my feelings about the incident, and that's why I'm having nightmares. The next day, when I arrived home, I called out, Chad, I'm home. I walked into the kitchen and saw Dr. Herschel and Chad in the middle of what looked like a tense conversation. Is everything okay? I asked, my eyes looking from Chad to Dr. Herschel. Oh, everything is fine, Monique, Dr. Herschel said as he got up from the kitchen table. He turned to Chad. I have a few things that I need to take care of at the office. We'll finish this discussion tomorrow. Chad walked Dr. Herschel to the door and I grabbed a glass of juice from the fridge. So, are you going to tell me what that's about? I asked when Chad re-entered the kitchen. It's nothing really. Dr. Herschel is just worried about a prototype that he's been working on. If he gets the grant, it would mean he could do so much more than he's doing now. It would also mean a bigger paycheck for me as well. I wish you and Dr. Herschel nothing but the best. I can't wait for him to get the grant either since I would be able to get my basement back. About a month after we moved, Dr. Herschel asked Chad if he could store a few things down in the basement. Not only wasn't I allowed in the basement, but Chad held the only key to the basement. With Dr. Herschel working extra hours on his prototype, it meant that Chad also worked extra hours. This meant that most weekends I was home alone. "I'm tired of sitting here doing nothing," I said. I grabbed my keys and decided that I would take a little road trip to the past. I wanted to see the house where I grew up. I missed my parents, and with my wedding coming up, I told Chad that we would go to the courthouse. I didn't want a big wedding. I left a note on the kitchen table for Chad and left. After 4 hours of sitting behind the wheel, I pulled up in front of the house that I grew up in. I was surprised to see it still standing. Chad said that my parents' house caught fire and they both died in the fire, but here stood the house just as I remembered it. I walked up to the front door and knocked. My mother answered the door. "Mom?" I said as tears swelled up in my eyes. "How could this be?" My mother looked as though she had seen a ghost. My father came to the door. "Honey, who's at the door?" My father took one look at me and his entire mood shifted. "Is this some sort of joke? Did someone put you up to this?" "Dad, what are you talking about? It's me, Monique." My voice cracked. "You need to get off my property or I'll be calling the police," my dad said, then slammed the door in my face. I ran to the car and started the engine. Why didn't my parents recognize me? Why would my dad treat me like that? Why did Chad tell me my parents were dead? The loud horn of a car interrupted my thoughts. A car was coming directly towards me, but it was too late. Bang! I woke up in the hospital. Chad was sitting in a chair next to the bed. "Hey, you, welcome back," Chad said as he reached out and squeezed my hand. "Chad," I said hesitantly, "why didn't you tell me that my parents were alive?" "Babe, it was for your own good," he said softly. "What do you mean for my own good? They are my parents, for God's sake," I shouted. Dr. Herschel walked into the room. "Did you know that my parents are alive as well?" I quizzed Dr. Herschel. Dr. Herschel looked at Chad and pointed to the door. I watched as Dr. Herschel and Chad walked out of the room without answering my question. "Where the hell do you think you're going? Chad, come back here!" I yelled. I tried to get out of bed, but my legs ached. After a few moments, Chad and Dr. Herschel walked back into the room. "We have to give you a sedative. You were in a car accident, and right now you are acting irrational. Chad will be able to answer any questions that you may have when you wake up," Dr. Herschel said calmly. Dr. Herschel walked towards me and injected my IV with the serum that was in the needle that he held. When I woke up, I was home in bed. I felt as though I was in a brain fog. "Chad, are you here?" I called from the bedroom. "Yes, I'm here. Is something wrong?" he asked with a puzzled look on his face as he walked into the bedroom. "I'm not sure. I just feel a little out of it," I said. "That's because you came down with the flu and you've been in bed for the past few days, babe," Chad said, concerned. "I dreamt that I went to see Mom and Dad and they didn't recognize me," I said and placed my head in my hands and cried. I watched as Chad went to the bedroom closet. He used the stepladder to retrieve a CD. He didn't say anything as he placed it in the DVD player. He sat next to me and held me in his arms. There they were, my parents, next to each other in matching coffins. It was a DVD of my parents' funeral. Chad explained to me that my parents had passed away years ago. I couldn't believe it. Was I losing my mind? Why did I keep having these weird dreams? Eventually, mostly out of exhaustion, I went to sleep. The next morning, Chad wasn't at home. He left a note on the nightstand saying that he just needed to drop something for Dr. Herschel and he would be right back. I went to the closet and got the box with the DVDs. I saw one marked Monique's 21st birthday. A smile came to my face as I remembered that special night. I pushed the video in the player and laid in bed to watch. I giggled as I never realized how nervous Chad was when he proposed. But I realized something else as well. I had a small sunflower tattoo on my left upper arm, but it was no longer there. I lifted my shirt just to make sure that there was no tattoo. Where is my tattoo? Did I remove it? I asked myself. I contemplated telling Chad, but my gut told me that he wasn't going to tell me the truth. Something was up. I had had the weirdest dream last night, that I had been in a car accident. It had felt so real. Was it just a dream? I got out of bed and headed to the garage. My eyes widened as I looked at the driver's side of my door that had a mammoth-sized dent. I heard the front door open. "Damn it, Chad is home," I mumbled. I snuck back into the house through the kitchen. Chad was in the bedroom. I ran towards the bathroom and opened and closed the door slowly. Just as I closed the door, a knock on the bathroom door startled me. "Yeah?" I asked, my heart pounding against my chest. I wonder if he saw me, I thought to myself in a panic. I inhaled deeply. "Is everything okay? How are you feeling?" Chad asked. "I'm okay," I said, then flushed the toilet. "I am feeling a bit lightheaded, though," I said as I washed my hands to continue my ruse. I opened the door and Chad was there waiting. "Let me help you to the bedroom, then get you something to eat, okay?" I nodded in agreement. Once Chad was out of the bedroom door, I got up and quickly returned the DVD to its place and went back to bed and pretended to be asleep. I heard when Chad came back into the room. "Monique, I brought you something to eat." I didn't answer. I still pretended to be asleep. Chad's phone rang and he answered. "Hi, Dr. Herschel. What can I do for you?" Silence. Then, "Yes, Dr. Herschel. I even showed her the DVD with the funeral." Silence. "Okay, Dr. Herschel. When I get the package tomorrow, I'll place it in the basement for safekeeping. Goodbye, Dr. Herschel." Chad walked out of the bedroom and I opened my eyes and thought, what did I get myself mixed up in? Was this person even Chad? I had so many questions, but I knew that all of my answers were in the basement. I needed to know what was in the basement. When Chad's package arrives tomorrow, I need to get into that basement when he opens that door. I thought to myself, today I need to pretend that everything is okay. Luckily for me, I'm ill, so I can lay in bed for the rest of the day away from Chad. The day dragged. It felt as though 1,000 years had passed. I drifted into a restless sleep that night as I was awakened by nightmares. I shot up in bed and looked around wide-eyed as I tried to catch my breath. Chad was nowhere to be seen. I snuck out of bed and went in search of him. The apartment was empty. I went to the basement and turned the knob for the door. My heart jolted against my ribcage as I realized the door was open. I slid gingerly into the basement, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. I wasn't the only girl in the basement. As I walked further into the basement, I counted at least 30 girls, 6 girls in 5 rows. "What the hell, Chad?" I gasped in disbelief. Each girl was attached to a tube and surrounded by a thick, transparent silicone. Each girl looked like me. "Yes, Monique, they are clones," Chad's voice echoed behind me. I spun around. "Why do you need clones of me?" I asked angrily. "Isn't one woman good enough for you?" Chad looked sad as he continued to talk to me. "You are also a clone, Monique." Chad began to walk towards me and I backed away from him. "What do you mean I'm a clone?" I cried. "The real Monique died in a fire at work a few days after her 21st birthday. I didn't want to lose you, so I got into contact with Dr. Herschel, who was already working on a prototype of this same nature." "That's what you and Dr. Herschel have been working on to obtain your grant? Making clones of me?" I screamed. "Can a clone do this?" I said as I grabbed the tubes that were hanging closest to me. Gooey liquid from the tubes fell on me and on the floor around me. I continued to pull the tubes from the other clones as well before Chad tackled me to the ground. "Monique, stop it! Can't you see why I did it? I couldn't bear to lose you," Chad said as he sat on top of me holding my arms. I heard another voice at the top of the basement stairs. "It's a good thing I was still here," Dr. Herschel said sharply. He walked over to Chad and I. He leaned over to me and said, "I've been working on this prototype for years, and you, my dear, are the final piece that I have been waiting for. I'm not going to allow any clone to mess this up for me." Dr. Herschel spoke to Chad. "The next time we bring her back, we will eliminate her parents for good, so that when she goes to visit, they really wouldn't be there." I watched in horror as Dr. Herschel injected me with a serum. My world became black. I tossed and turned, and finally I opened my eyes groggily. "Hey, beautiful, how you feeling?" Chad asked as he leaned over to kiss me good morning. I smiled and hugged him. "I feel good," I replied sweetly.